I've been in elementary education for 22 years. I've been based in the same elementary school for 22 years here, and I spent the first 5 years in regular general education classroom as classroom teacher of upper elementary grades. And I would say immediately in my job, hired as an upper grades teacher. With my master's in education, I was immediately struck with, wait a minute, I've got fifth graders who do not read. Nobody taught me how to teach kids how to read because I was in the section of the cohort that was getting ready to teach upper elementary grades. So immediately, almost day one, started the kind of digging in for my own, figuring out, oh my gosh, how am I going to serve my kids who I quickly realized span the spectrum from like pre-primer kindergarten type skills into middle school skills.
So just to ask the question plainly, what were you expecting from fifth graders in terms of reading ability, and what did you get?
I was expecting that they would have solid reading skills, that I would be working on deeper comprehension, response to reading, writing. I didn't expect that there would be students who couldn't read, just have the basic, get the words off the page.
When you see these numbers, what do you see?
I see a crisis. I see a literacy crisis. Those are staggeringly low numbers. That's the percentage of third graders, I'm guessing.
Yes, third graders
third graders in Oregon who are meeting proficiency standards in language arts.
And just because it is kind of a mouthful, that being proficient in English language arts at third grade, is this if someone is reaching this metric, the 39.4%, are they able to read? Are they reading at grade level? Like in a more conversational way, what does it mean to be proficient in English language arts?
It means that they are, so reading is very complicated, very, very complicated. And to show proficiency, yes, this means that they are able to read and comprehend and respond at grade level to reading text and also being able to write.
My understanding has always been that being proficient in English at third grade is really critical, because before then you are learning to read, and then after that point you really transition into reading to learn. Is that fair?
It is. And another way to think of it is a metaphor, an analogy I like to use is when you're building a house, you can't start putting up walls unless you have laid the foundation. And I've never actually built a house, and I'm not a builder, but I understand enough, especially I have lived in many different earthquake zones, that you have to have solid ground. That ground has to be leveled, and then you have to put in a very, 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 very solid foundation, which you never even see later once the house is built, before you can start putting down floors and constructing walls. Learning to read is very similar to that. There are foundational skills, and if those foundational skills aren't there, it'd be kind of like trying to build a house on beach sand without having a foundation under there. So yeah, and it's important to say that this isn't exceptional. The benchmark isn't exceptional reading skills. It's basic proficiency, reading, comprehending, understanding what you've read, and being able to think about it and respond.
Yeah. So for folks who are not extremely well versed in childhood education, literacy education, and they see these numbers, a natural question I'm sure a lot of people have is, how did we get here? So what do you think? I know that's a loaded question, knowing as much as
That's a loaded question for sure.
So what would you say has been kind of, and I know we don't need to go through the history here, but now the situation that we are in now, what foundational lessons are kids not learning?
I mean, I think yes, it's a complicated question with a myriad of answers, but I think the most basic answer is that our teachers, we don't prepare teachers adequately to be able to reach all kids in a general education classroom. I should say we haven't historically.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Do you want to repeat that sentence real quick?
Yeah, I think it boils down to our system as it currently and historically has been does not adequately prepare general classroom teachers to meet the needs, to be able to understand all of the underlying understandings and have the skill, the methods to teach all students. It's definitely not a lack of passion, dedication, time, effort. All of those things are there in abundance for overwhelmingly, I would say, virtually all teachers. So it's the way in which we're prepared, and also, yeah, the way. Sorry.
No,
Yeah.
you're totally right. And so now I want to get a little bit more into that.
Okay.
Before we get into what's being worked on, the future
Yeah.
of this, how is it that a teacher's lesson to a class of third graders or second or whatever the grade is, when you say it's not reaching everyone, what do you mean?
Kids are very, very, very unique. They're very diverse. Students come in with all kinds of variations in life experience. There are many factors that go into how efficiently, how quickly students are going to access instruction and be able to learn to read. Some of those factors are we can see them or we learn about them from parents. Some of them are hidden because nobody knows about them. They hide early. There are neurodiversities. It's increasingly common. We're seeing more and more and more kids with different behaviors and different factors. And when we prepare teachers to just teach this kind of the narrow scope, it's maybe this many students and 60% or more are falling out into these outlier areas. That's how you end up with numbers like that. And if you were to disaggregate those numbers into demographics,
like economic classes,
different demographics of kids, those numbers are staggeringly even higher than that. And there are many students who fall into multiple exceptionalities that makes it even harder.
What do you think is the most crucial change to be made? I'm not sure if that's the best way to get into it because it's a really wide topic.
Yeah.
But what do you think is the most consequential change that needs to happen in Oregon to improve these numbers?
It's complicated and simple all at the same time. I think that what it boils down to is we need to make sure that all teachers in the classrooms are trained and have the disposition to believe that all students can learn to proficiently read and write. And once they have that disposition to have a solid understanding of the science of reading.
And I think you have some strings to help us understand.
I do. The elementary teacher in me brought some manipulatives to help illustrate what that means.
Okay.
And to have the methodology to deliver it to their students. Something that we've done is our system relies on as I said before, very surface level. Like, we prepare teachers by doing all of these things just this deeply. And then you go into the classroom.
It's like we're preparing teachers to teach reading as well as math, as well as history, as well as every other thing that they have to teach in elementary school simultaneously.
Yeah, all of those things. And be able to meet their social emotional needs and make sure they're fed and all of those other things.
It sounds like it's a situation where you're learning how to do everything, but you're not learning how to do one thing well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I own my bias, but also think that there is a pretty solid argument to be made that of all those things, literacy is, once basic needs are met, right?
Right.
Kids are sheltered, they're fed, they have medical care, they're social emotionally safe. Literacy is something that affects you deeply for your whole entire life. Kids who can't read and write, especially by third grade, they know. And to watch kids sink into the despair of, I can't do this thing, there's a huge correlation with depression and anxiety and all kinds of places where that can go as kids. They don't.
And that can really snowball.
Yeah. I should say I talked a lot about kind of that, what I identify as one major reason that we got here. Another thing that goes with that you really can't extrapolate away from that is that a belief in the myth that reading is a natural human developmental milestone. It simply isn't. So babies, there are certain natural developmental milestones that babies will learn. Human babies will hit those milestones unless there is some massive, massive thing wrong, and that's a very, very, very tiny percentage. They will learn to crawl, they will learn to walk, and they will learn to speak. Oral language is a natural developmental milestone that babies naturally do if they've heard, as long as they have hearing. Reading is not a natural developmental milestone. It is, on the timeline of human history, it is a very, very new invention, and it is not something that we do, that our brains do naturally.
Yeah.
Some kids' brains, enough kids' brains are wired in a way that if they have all of the things, they have well-developed oral language because of that, where they've spent their first 5 years of their life and what they've
It all comes down to the differences in upbringings that everyone has from age 0 to 5.
Yeah.
Right?
It comes, and also how is that brain wired, and that's what we can't see. But the idea, the myth that, well, he or she is just a late bloomer. Well, we're just not meeting those early benchmarks in kindergarten, first grade, but they've got enough. They're going to be fine. Just wait and see, wait and see, wait and see. Wait to bloom is really, for way, 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 way too many kids, wait to fail. And then by third grade, it is not impossible. It's never impossible. It's never too late to learn how to read, but the older you get, the harder it is.
Yeah.
So.
School goes down its own pace. School it ramps up in terms of its academic demands, its literary demands, and so this is kind of this moment in third grade is the kind of that benchmark for it.